For decades, Hollywood has dazzled us with glitz and glamour, golden statues, red carpets, and perfect smiles. But beneath that shimmering surface lies a truth the cameras never showed. Some of Hollywood's brightest stars weren't just hiding scandals, they were hiding their identity. They were forced to deny their black heritage just to keep working in an industry built on illusion and control. Who were they? How far did they go to protect their fame? And what happened when the truth finally surfaced? Get ready. What you're about to discover will completely change how you see Hollywood. Before we start, hit subscribe and turn on notifications because these are the stories they never wanted you to hear. Freddie Washington. In the segregated Hollywood of the 1930s, Freddie Washington was more than a performer. She was a quiet revolution wrapped in elegance, intellect, and unflinching pride. Born Frederica Carolyn Washington on December 23, 1903, in Savannah, Georgia, she entered a world that judged a woman not just by her talent, but by the color of her skin. Her light complexion and refined beauty could have opened the doors to white privilege, but only if she was willing to deny who she truly was. Freddie never did. She chose truth over convenience. Growing up in Harlem during the electrifying pulse of the Harlem Renaissance, Washington found herself surrounded by brilliance. Duke Ellington's jazz, Josephine Baker's charisma, and Paul Robeson's thunderous dignity. She began her journey as a dancer at the Cotton Club, the legendary venue where black performers dazzled white audiences who were forbidden to sit beside them. The contradiction wasn't lost on Freddie. Behind her smile was awareness, the kind that comes from seeing both adoration and exclusion in the same gaze. Her poise soon caught Hollywood's attention. Filmmakers sought her exotic beauty for roles that fit no real person, only stereotypes. But in 1934, Freddie shattered those limits when she starred in Imitation of Life, portraying Peola, a fair-skinned black woman who rejects her heritage to pass as white. The film struck America's conscience like a thunderclap. It earned an Oscar nomination for Best Picture and made Freddie Washington a symbol of racial complexity and painful truth. The irony was cruel. While audiences praised her performance, Hollywood tried to seduce her into living her character. Sides lie. One studio executive told her bluntly, "If you pass for white, I still make you a star in 3 years." Freddie Sipp's reply was lightning in a world that preferred whispers. "I am a Negro, and I sit and proud of it. I don't need to pretend to be someone else just to be accepted." At a time when others, like Merle Oberon, hid their ancestry to survive, Freddie's courage was revolutionary. But defiance had consequences. After Imitation of Life, casting directors avoided her. She was too light for Negro roles and too honest for white ones. The same beauty that once enchanted producers now branded her as a problem. Hollywood, built on illusion, had no place for a woman who insisted on being real. Yet Freddie refused to fade. She redirected her fire toward justice. In 1937, she co-founded the Negro Actors Guild of America, fighting for fair treatment of black performers exploited by the industry. When Hollywood silenced her, she picked up a pen, writing essays for the People's Voice, exposing racial hypocrisy and demanding that black characters be portrayed with depth, dignity, and humanity. She returned to Broadway with grace and defiance, performing in Mamba's Daughters in 1939, proof that her art could thrive without Hollywood's permission. Through the 1940s and 1950s, Freddie became a mentor to young black artists, urging them to claim their identity in a system that demanded they erase it. When she passed away in 1994 at the age of 90, the headlines barely noticed. But historians and artists never forgot. They saw in Freddie Washington not a fallen star, but a moral compass, a woman who refused to let fame rewrite her truth. In an age when survival often required silence, Freddie chose to speak. In a world built on masks, she lived unmasked. She didn't become Hollywood's darling, she became its conscience. 2. Carol Channing. For nearly half a century, Carol Elaine Channing dazzled the world as Broadway's golden girl, platinum blonde hair, sparkling eyes, and a smile that could light up the stage. To millions, she was the epitome of American glamour and charm, the beloved star of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes and Hello Dolly. Born on January 31, 1921, in Seattle, Washington, Carol rose from humble beginnings to become a theatrical icon. Her raspy voice, impeccable comedic timing, and radiant energy made her unforgettable. Over her long career, she earned 3 Tony Awards, a Golden Globe and an Oscar nomination, solidifying her place among the legends of stage and screen. But behind the sequins and applause, Carol carried a secret that could have destroyed her in the racially divided world of early Hollywood and Broadway. She was part black. Her father, George Channing, a journalist and minister, was of African American descent. Yet during the 1930s and 1940s, entertainment operated under an unspoken rule: white sells tickets. Any hint of black ancestry could end a career. Carol's father knew this, warning his daughter never to reveal the truth. If anyone finds out, producers often told her, "You'll lose everything." As her fame grew, so did her fear. Behind the scenes, whispers about her heritage circulated, but no one dared confront her directly. Carol smiled, danced, and played her part, not just on stage but in life. Friends later recalled private moments when she wept in dressing rooms, confessing how exhausting it was to live in hiding. For decades, she protected her secret, believing it was the price of survival. Only in her 80s did she finally decide she had lived long enough to stop pretending. In 2002, during interviews with CNN and Larry King Live, Carol revealed the truth: "My father was a black man. I've spent my life afraid people would find out, but the truth should never be a burden." The world was stunned. The New York Times ran the headline, "Carol Channing's half-century secret finally revealed." Some fans were shocked, others puzzled, but many, especially in the black community, embraced her with admiration. Rather than tarnishing her image, her honesty elevated it. Carol had survived an era when identity could determine destiny, and her courage proved stronger than prejudice. In later years, she spoke openly about the pain of hiding who she was. "It's exhausting to perform a version of yourself that isn't real," she said. "Fear stole decades from me." Yet she acknowledged that, had she revealed her heritage earlier, her career might never have existed. Despite her struggles, Carol never lost her love for the stage. Even in her late 80s, she returned to perform with the same magnetic joy that made audiences adore her. When she passed away on January 15, 2019, at the age of 97, she left behind more than a glittering career. She left a legacy of truth and resilience. Carol Channing's story is a haunting reflection of a time when fame demanded denial and survival meant silence. Beneath the wigs and laughter was a woman who spent a lifetime wearing a mask, only to remove it in her twilight years. In the end, her greatest performance wasn't on stage but in her courage to finally live as herself, proving that no secret, no matter how deeply buried, can dim the brilliance of authenticity. 3. Dwayne Johnson. Before he became the world's highest-paid actor, Dwayne Douglas Johnson was just a kid from Hayward, California, caught between two worlds, carrying the legacy of strength, struggle, and identity. Born on May 2, 1972, he grew up at the intersection of two powerful heritages: his father's proud black Nova Scotian roots and his mother's deep Samoan lineage. His father, Rocky Johnson, was a pioneer, one of the first black champions in WWF history, a man who fought both inside the ring and against racism outside it. He performed in packed arenas like Madison Square Garden, often receiving cheers in the spotlight and slurs in the parking lot. His mother, Ata Fides Manu Maivia, was the daughter of the legendary Samoan wrestler Peter Maivia, making Dwayne heir to one of wrestling's most respected dynasties. But despite that rich legacy, Dwayne's early life was anything but glamorous. Growing up in a mostly white neighborhood, he was bullied for his skin color, mocked for his name, and treated as an outsider everywhere he went. "I didn't fit in anywhere," he later said. "Not white enough, not black enough, not Samoan enough." His family's financial struggles were constant. They were once evicted from their apartment in Hawaii, and by the age of 17, Dwayne had already been arrested several times for theft and fighting. Yet those hard lessons became the foundation of his character. The confidence and charisma that would later define The Rock weren't born in the ring. They were forged in adversity. When he entered professional wrestling in 1996, debuting under the name Rocky Maivia, the crowd's reaction was brutal. Fans booed him relentlessly, dismissing him as a product of nepotism, too polished, too forced, too fake. Sports commentators predicted he'd be gone within a year, but Dwayne didn't quit. Instead, he transformed. He shed the polite persona and re-emerged as The Rock, a brash, funny, unapologetic anti-hero who turned mockery into entertainment. The world couldn't get enough. By the early 2000s, The Rock had become one of the most electrifying figures in wrestling history. 10 world championships later, he wasn't just a performer, he was a phenomenon. Then came Hollywood. His first major role, The Scorpion King 2001, came with new challenges. Rumors swirled that studio executives had digitally lightened his skin tone on posters to make him more marketable to white audiences. Critics doubted whether a non-white actor could ever lead a global blockbuster. Dwayne didn't stay silent. In an ESPN interview that same year, he made his stance clear: "My father is Rocky Johnson, a black man who bled to open doors for others. I'll never deny who I am." That declaration struck a chord. The Scorpion King shattered box office records, earning $36 million in its opening weekend and making Dwayne Johnson the highest-paid actor for a debut role in Hollywood history. From there, he built an empire. With Fast and Furious, Jumanji, and Young Rock, he became a global household name, proof that authenticity could be just as powerful as action. His success wasn't about erasing his roots, but embracing them. As his fame grew, Dwayne used his platform to celebrate both sides of his heritage. He covered his chest with Polynesian tribal tattoos, symbolizing family and courage, and he often honored his father's legacy publicly. His message became his brand. Identity isn't a burden, it's your superpower. Today, Dwayne Johnson stands as more than an actor or athlete. He's a symbol of perseverance, a man who turned ridicule into respect and struggle into strength. His journey, from a broke teenager in Hawaii to an $800 million icon, is more than a success story. It's a reminder that true power isn't in how the world sees you, it's in never forgetting who you are. 4. Hattie McDaniel. In 1940, beneath the glittering chandeliers of the Grand Ambassador Hotel in Los Angeles, history was written, and injustice revealed itself in the same breath. That night, Hattie McDaniel, born on June 10, 1893 in Wichita, Kansas, became the first African American to win an Academy Award. Her portrayal of Mammy in Gone with the Wind had moved millions. Draped in a turquoise gown and trembling with emotion, she stood before a segregated crowd and said through tears, "I sincerely hope I shall always be a credit to my race." The applause was thunderous. Yet when the ceremony ended, she returned not to the front tables with her white co-stars, but to a small corner near the kitchen, barred from the main hall by the hotel's segregation policy. On the night she made history, she was still not allowed to sit among her peers. That cruel contradiction became the defining image of her triumph and tragedy. The daughter of former slaves, Hattie was born into hardship but carried music in her bones. Her father, Henry McDaniel, was a Civil War veteran who had fought for the Union. She grew up in Denver, where her quick wit and powerful voice first turned heads. Touring with minstrel shows in her youth, she wrote and performed comic songs that blended humor with heartbreak. By the 1920s, She had broken a new barrier, becoming the first black woman ever to sing on American radio. But Hollywood, for all its glamour, had invisible walls. When Hattie transitioned to film in the 1930s, the industry offered her only one kind of part: the maid, the cook, the caretaker. Out of over 300 films she appeared in, more than 80% cast her as a servant. To white audiences, she represented loyalty and comfort. To the studios, she was safe, and to much of the black press, she was a symbol of painful compromise. Her Oscar win in 1940 magnified that tension. The Chicago Defender ran a searing editorial titled "An Oscar for Hattie McDaniel, Pride or Humiliation," accusing Hollywood of celebrating her servitude instead of her skill. Some accused her of reinforcing stereotypes. Others saw her victory as a triumph of perseverance in a racist system. Hattie, as always, refused to apologize for her success. "I'd rather play a maid than be one," she declared. "Why should I deny the work that puts food on my table and opens doors for others?" Behind her calm defiance was a quiet activist. She donated generously to the NAACP and the USO, performing tirelessly for black troops during World War II, men who were themselves barred from white-only entertainment tours. Even as Hollywood shut her out of serious roles, she continued to break ground elsewhere. In 1947, Hattie became the first black woman to headline a national radio sitcom with The Beulah Show. Yet even that victory came with resistance. Networks censored her scripts under pressure from both white sponsors and civil rights leaders wary of stereotypical portrayals. Still, Hattie persisted, always aware that every role, every broadcast was a step forward, however small. Her later years were marked by illness and financial struggles, but her spirit never dimmed. When she died of breast cancer in 1952, at just 59, she left behind more than awards. She left a legacy of resilience in the face of cruelty. Even in death, segregation followed her. Her final wish was to be buried in Hollywood Cemetery, but she was denied because of her race. Nearly half a century later, in 1999, the cemetery finally erected a memorial in her honor, a long overdue gesture to a woman who had carried the weight of two histories, one of oppression and one of brilliance. Hattie McDaniel's story remains one of bittersweet victory. She shattered a barrier that should never have existed, standing tall in an industry that tried to keep her small. She didn't just win an Oscar. She claimed visibility in a world determined to look away. Her courage carved a path for every black artist who followed, proving that dignity, once earned, can never again be erased. 5. Dorothy Dandridge. In the 1950s, an era still divided by whites-only signs, Dorothy Dandridge stood as a vision of grace, rebellion, and impossible beauty. She wasn't just an actress, she was a revolution wrapped in silk and song. Born on November 9, 1922, in Cleveland, Ohio, Dorothy's journey to stardom began early. Alongside her sister Vivian, she performed as part of the Wonder Children, a singing duo that captivated audiences from church basements to big city nightclubs. Their talent carried them all the way to Los Angeles and eventually to the world-famous Cotton Club, a place where black performers entertained white patrons who were not allowed to share a table with them. Even then, Dorothy's presence was magnetic. Critics called her the Black Hedy Lamarr, a comparison that was both a compliment and a cage. Her defining moment arrived in 1954 with Carmen Jones, directed by Otto Preminger. As the fiery, sensual Carmen, Dorothy radiated a confidence that Hollywood had never seen in a black woman. The performance earned her an Academy Award nomination for Best Actress, a historic first. Yet, while her name glittered in headlines, the same industry that praised her also tried to erase her. Makeup artists were instructed to lighten her skin. Directors rejected her for major roles, claiming she was too dark for white audiences. When she auditioned for The King and I, one producer dismissed her coldly. "She seps too Negro." Hollywood admired her beauty, but feared her color. Instead of scripts, Dorothy received scrutiny. Instead of respect, she got gossip. Her secret affair with Preminger, a powerful white director, became public scandal, and the same studios that had once celebrated her now branded her difficult and uncontrollable. Still, Dorothy refused to conform. In a 1955 Ebony interview, she declared, "I'm not just a pretty face. I want to pave the way for others," but her defiance came with heartbreak. The roles vanished, the money dwindled, and the loneliness deepened. She returned to small nightclubs, singing to audiences who barely remembered that she had once made history. On September 8, 1965, Dorothy Dandridge was found dead in her Los Angeles apartment. She was only 42 years old. The coroner ruled it an overdose, but her death felt like something larger, the silencing of a woman who had dared to dream beyond the boundaries set for her. Hollywood moved on quickly, but her legacy refused to fade. In 2002, when Halle Berry became the first black woman to win an Oscar for Best Actress, she stood on that stage and said through tears, "This is for Dorothy Dandridge." Dorothy's life burned bright and brief, but its glow lit the path for generations that followed. For every black actress who demanded to be more than a stereotype, more than a footnote, she may have been denied the roles she deserved, but in the end, Dorothy Dandridge wrote her own, one of courage, brilliance, and beauty that no prejudice could dim. 6. Wentworth Miller. When Prison Break premiered in 2005, millions were drawn to the icy blue eyes and calm brilliance of Michael Scofield, the man who would defy the system to save his brother. But behind that calculated gaze was an actor fighting a different kind of prison, one built not of bars and concrete, but of identity, expectation, and silence. Wentworth Earl Miller III, born on June 2, 1972 in Chipping Norton, England, and raised in Brooklyn, New York, grew up between two contrasting worlds. His father, Wentworth Miller III, was a black man of Jamaican and African American descent. His mother, Joy Marie Palm, was white, with English, German, and Russian roots. Their son inherited both lineages, and with them, the lifelong burden of not fitting neatly into either. From childhood, Wentworth felt like an outsider. At school, he was asked over and over, "What are you?" A question that stung more deeply than most realized. It was like living life with a question mark attached to your face, he would later say. His light skin and calm demeanor often confused people, leaving him feeling unseen by both sides of his heritage. Despite the internal storm, Wentworth excelled academically. He attended Princeton University, where he studied English literature and graduated with honors. Yet, even in the Ivy League, he grappled with identity. He later admitted that no amount of achievement could quiet the whisper that he didn't fully belong anywhere. Hollywood only magnified that struggle. Casting directors couldn't place him. Not black enough for black roles, they said. Not white enough for white ones. For years, he lingered on the margins, an overqualified actor overlooked for every major part. Then came Prison Break. The role of Michael Scofield changed everything. The show exploded into an international phenomenon, airing in 185 countries and earning Golden Globe nominations. Wentworth's intense yet understated performance made him a household name. But even as fame embraced him, Hollywood tried to rewrite who he was. European magazines airbrushed his skin lighter. American tabloids labeled him the mysterious Englishman, erasing his black heritage entirely. At first, Wentworth stayed silent, afraid that telling the truth would shatter his carefully constructed image. He later confessed, "Hollywood wasn't ready for complexity. I didn't want to give them an excuse to put me back in the shadows." By 2007, as rumors spread about his racial background, he decided to speak for himself. In an interview with The Guardian, he said plainly, "My father is of African descent. I've never denied that. But Hollywood isn't comfortable talking about it." That simple statement rippled across the industry. Fans who had admired his beauty began to admire his bravery. But the cost of that honesty was high. Behind the camera, Wentworth battled profound depression. Years of hiding, his race, his emotions, his truth had taken their toll. In a 2013 Facebook post, he revealed that he had once attempted suicide, writing, "I was trying to end a life I didn't think I belonged in." That same year, he came out publicly as gay, rejecting Hollywood's pressure to stay silent. His letter to the St. Petersburg Film Festival, declining an invitation due to Russia's anti-LGBTQ+ laws, went viral. For the first time, Wentworth's vulnerability became his greatest strength. From that moment, he shifted from actor to advocate. He began speaking openly about mental health, identity, and representation, encouraging others to live authentically. Though he later stepped back from leading man roles to write for shows like The Flash and Legends of Tomorrow, his voice grew louder and more purposeful. Wentworth Miller's journey isn't one of scandal, it's one of survival. He broke out of more than a fictional prison. He escaped the invisible walls of Hollywood's narrow definitions of race and masculinity. Today, his story stands as a reminder that true freedom begins the moment you stop hiding who you are. Wentworth didn't just play a man breaking out of prison, he lived it. 7. Clark Gable. In the glittering world of 1930s Hollywood, when the silver screen shimmered brighter than reality, Clark Gable reigned supreme. With his debonair smile, commanding voice, and effortless swagger, he became the living definition of masculine perfection. To millions, he was the dream every man wanted to be and every woman wanted to love. But behind the charm of the King of Hollywood lay a secret, one that could have destroyed everything he built. Born on February 1, 1901, in Cadiz, Ohio, Gable's journey from working-class obscurity to cinematic royalty was the stuff of legend. Yet, as his fame soared, so did the whispers. Rumors began to circulate that his family carried African American and Native American ancestry, a dangerous accusation in an America still ruled by Jim Crow laws and racial purity myths. In an era where one drop of non-white blood could erase a career, MGM, the studio that owned Gable's image, allegedly went into overdrive to bury the story. Local birth records from Cadiz mysteriously disappeared. Studio publicists rewrote his origin story, turning him into the archetype of rugged white Americana, a steel-jawed everyman forged from the heartland. Columnist Hedda Hopper, one of Hollywood's most feared gossip writers, fueled the speculation in a cryptic Los Angeles Times column, writing, "There's something not entirely American about him." The coded phrase sent shockwaves through Hollywood's elite. For MGM, it wasn't just gossip, it was a potential catastrophe. Behind the scenes, executives tightened their control. They dictated Gable's interviews, limited his public appearances, and crafted a spotless persona, a man who represented the American ideal, not one who challenged it. But Gable himself was far less compliant than the studio wished. During the filming of Gone with the Wind, 1939, Gable's quiet rebellion emerged. He developed a genuine friendship with Hattie McDaniel, the talented black actress who played Mammy and would later become the first African American to win an Oscar. When Gable discovered that segregated restrooms had been built on set, he tore down the colored-only sign and told producers, "If Hattie can't use this restroom, I won't shoot another scene." His defiance stunned the crew but earned McDaniel's lasting respect. "He treated me as his equal, not as his maid," she said in a later interview. Yet Hollywood's hypocrisy remained unbroken. At the Atlanta premiere of Gone with the Wind, McDaniel was barred from attending due to segregation laws. Gable, enraged, refused to go until McDaniel persuaded him. "You have to be there for all of us," she told him. That moment revealed the quiet courage behind the Hollywood idol. While America saw a king, Gable was a man navigating the painful contradictions of fame in a racially divided nation. The studio marketed him as the ultimate white hero, even as rumors of tainted blood circulated in backrooms. Some casting directors reportedly rejected him for not being white enough, while tabloids whispered cruelly about a man wearing white skin. Then tragedy struck. In 1942, his wife, actress Carole Lombard, died in a plane crash while returning from a war bond tour. Devastated, Gable enlisted in the U.S. Army Air Forces at age 40. He flew 5 combat missions over Germany, surviving when enemy fire tore through his plane. Even President Franklin D. Roosevelt praised him, calling him the movie star who carried courage into battle. When he returned, his legend only grew, but so did the mystery. His rumored ancestry was never confirmed nor denied. MGM made sure of that. Yet those whispers gave his story a haunting power, a reminder that even America's golden idols were not immune to its prejudice. Clark Gable's legacy is one of contradictions, adored yet censored, idolized yet contained. He was the image of perfection built on imperfection, a man forced to play America's fantasy while quietly rejecting its cruelty. In the end, his true greatness wasn't just in how he commanded the screen, but in the small, unpublicized acts of integrity that defied an unjust system. Clark Gable didn't just embody Hollywood's golden age, he exposed its cracks, proving that even kings wear invisible masks. 8. Mariah Carey. Long before the world crowned her the songbird supreme, Mariah Carey was just a little girl standing at the crossroads of identity, too light to be black, too dark to be white. Behind the glitter, the 5-octave range and the record-breaking hits, was a child who learned early that belonging came at a cost. Born on March 27, 1969, in Huntington, New York, Mariah was the daughter of 2 dreamers who defied a divided world. Her father, Alfred Roy Carey, was an aeronautical engineer of African-Venezuelan descent. Her mother, Patricia Hickey, was a white Irish opera singer who followed love instead of society's rules. Their interracial marriage in the 1970s was an act of courage and rebellion in a neighborhood that refused to see past skin. Mariah's earliest memories weren't of lullabies, but of shattered glass. Neighbors hurled rocks through their windows. Classmates whispered cruelly, "What are you anyway?" The question followed her everywhere, like a ghost. "I grew up feeling like an outsider in every room," she would later say. "It was a constant battle to fit into a world that didn't know what to do with me." Music became her sanctuary, the one place where she was limitless. At just 3 years old, she began mimicking her mother's operatic scales. By high school, she was writing songs, scribbling lyrics on notebook paper, dreaming not of fame but of freedom, a life where her voice would define her instead of her appearance. That dream came true in 1990, when a young Mariah handed her demo tape to Tommy Mottola, the head of Columbia Records. Legend has it, he listened to it in his car and turned around immediately, saying, "Find that girl." Within a year, her debut single Vision of Love soared to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100, and a superstar was born. But behind the fairy tale was a quiet erasure. The label that signed her, and later married her, didn't just market her voice, they rebranded her image. Executives brightened her photos, straightened her curls, and airbrushed her blackness out of existence. The goal was clear: make her universal, a palatable pop princess for white audiences. A leaked Columbia memo years later exposed the ugly truth. Black features might limit her global appeal. Magazines lightened her complexion. Publicists discouraged her from attending black cultural events. Even her interviews were curated to avoid mention of her father's heritage. She was living her dream, but behind someone else's reflection. Still, the music defied the box they tried to put her in. Between 1990 and 2000, Mariah shattered record after record, earning 19 Billboard #1 hits, second only to the Beatles. Her albums Music Box, 1993, and Daydream, 1995, sold over 20 million copies each, and her songwriting, often overlooked, proved she wasn't just a voice, she was a visionary. While the industry tried to define her, she was quietly rewriting its rules. By the early 2000s, Mariah had endured fame, heartbreak, and breakdowns under the pressure of perfection. Then came the moment that changed everything. In a candid interview with Oprah Winfrey, she finally spoke her truth. "My father is a black man. That's who I am, and I'm proud of that part of me." It was more than a revelation, it was liberation. Fans who had never known her true story saw the woman behind the legend. Her honesty exposed how deeply the entertainment industry had whitewashed artists for profit. From that moment, Mariah reclaimed her narrative, her curls returned, her confidence deepened, her music became more personal, more hers. Today, with over 200 million records sold, 5 Grammy Awards, and a legacy that spans generations, Mariah Carey stands as far more than a pop icon. She is a survivor, a woman who refused to be edited into perfection. Her story is proof that real power doesn't come from fitting in, but from daring to be seen. Mariah Carey didn't just sing her way to the top, she sang her way home to herself. In the heart of Detroit's Brewster Douglas housing projects, a young girl named Diana Ernestine Earl Ross dreamed of lights, sequins, and escape. Born on March 26, 1944, she grew up during a time when segregation still shadowed America, when the idea of a black woman topping the pop charts seemed unimaginable. Yet even as a child, Diana's voice shimmered with something rare, a quiet power that could transcend boundaries. By her late teens, that voice found a home. Diana joined a local group called the Primes, which soon evolved into the Supremes under the guidance of Berry Gordy, founder of Motown Records. Gordy recognized in her not just talent, but transformation, a chance to craft a star who could bridge racial divides. With his mentorship, Diana learned diction, stage presence, and style, preparing her to stand where no black woman had before. By the mid-1960s, the Supremes were unstoppable. Their hits, Baby Love, You Can't Hurry Love, and Stop, In the Name of Love, topped the Billboard charts again and again. They became America's sweethearts, rivaling even the Beatles in popularity. Diana, elegant and poised, was Motown's crown jewel, a symbol of beauty and control in a world eager to limit both for women like her. But behind the glitter, there was a cost. Gordy's meticulous image building came with unspoken compromises. Her lighter complexion and refined persona were marketed to appeal to white audiences. Critics called her universal, while others whispered she was too polished to be soulful. Within the black community, some saw her as a hero, others as a symbol of cultural compromise. Ebony magazine once wrote that she stood between two worlds, belonging fully to neither. Tensions within the Supremes grew as her fame eclipsed the group's unity. Fellow member Mary Wilson accused Motown of turning them into Diana Ross and the Supremes, erasing the others' contributions. When Diana left the group in 1970 to pursue a solo career, some called it betrayal, others called it destiny. Hollywood soon beckoned. In 1972, Ross delivered a breathtaking performance as Billie Holiday in Lady Sings the Blues. Critics had doubted her ability to portray the tortured jazz icon, claiming she was too glamorous for the role. She proved them wrong, earning an Academy Award nomination and a Golden Globe win. Overnight, she redefined what a black woman could be in film: complex, magnetic, and utterly human. Still, prejudice trailed her. Some directors said she wasn't black enough for certain roles, a bitter irony for someone who had spent her life breaking racial barriers. In a 1977 interview with Barbara Walters, Ross sighed, "I'm tired of being told I'm not black enough to sing black music and not white enough to be a Hollywood star." That confession revealed the ache of generations of light-skinned performers, forced to navigate identity as performance. Through it all, Diana never faltered. Her solo hits, Touch Me in the Morning, Theme from Mahogany, and Ain't No Mountain High Enough, defined an era. On stage, she radiated confidence. Off stage, she opened doors for others. Her influence stretched far beyond Motown, inspiring artists like Beyoncé, Janet Jackson, and Rihanna, who followed her blueprint of elegance fused with empowerment. Across 6 decades, Diana Ross became more than a singer or actress. She became a movement. She didn't just break barriers, she redrew them. Her story is one of reinvention, resilience, and grace in the face of scrutiny. In every note she sang, there was defiance. In every gown she wore, there was power. Diana Ross proved that talent could outshine prejudice and that true artistry lies not in fitting in, but in standing unapologetically apart. She remains a living testament to what happens when a woman refuses to let the world define her shine. Hollywood's golden age shimmered with fame, luxury, and illusion, but behind that glow were stars forced to dim their true light. Which of their stories changed the way you see Hollywood's past? Join the conversation below, and don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful hidden truths that history tried to silence.